Hey guys, it's Ann. Today we're going to take a look in on my 3-layer DIY stacked worm tower. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the paces of what the bi-weekly maintenance is on these bins, and kind of also talk to you about, I made this 3 years ago and with the best information available, and honestly I think I would have done some things a little bit different if I were to make one again today. So I'm going to go over that as I'm working through the bin. And as I said, it's 3 years old now. It's been about 3 weeks since we've looked in on this bin, so let's see what it's doing. Last time we did do a feeding, don't really remember what it was, probably salsa related, and we gave them a lot of bedding to make sure that the passers-by of the bugs was having a bit of a problem with gnats and stuff, and I was trying to prevent any more of that. So I think the feeding, pretty safe to say the feeding was over here. So we'll kind of peel this back. This was all brand new bedding 3 weeks ago. And we fed on this side, hoping that any sort of juices would drip down to the lower levels. And this is interesting. This is a tomato skin. And I just found out not too long ago that tomatoes either have clear skin or yellow skin, depending on the kind of tomato you have. I thought that was really interesting. I thought they were all the same. So it's pretty interesting. There's also some pepper skins in here, so those do take a little longer, but it's funny how they end up looking sort of like plastic by the time they get done being eaten. These were previously frozen, so even though you are seeing a lot of seeds here, I don't expect to see any germination because they were frozen for at least a week before I fed them to the worms. It's not necessary. If things do sprout, you just uproot them and turn them underneath, and then the worms will eat the sprouts. It is something that the worms can totally use for food. Now, as I said, we're going to go through what I had done with this bin when I first made it and what I would do differently. One of the things is that I assumed I was going to need to keep the lid on at all times. Not true. I also assumed that I needed to have holes in the side for air, which totally would have been necessary had I continued to use a lid forever. But it didn't. So really the holes along the side aren't necessary because the air does get through the top because I don't use a lid anymore. Next layer down. So the next layer down, I do have little ventilation holes in here, and I think I still stand by the need for those. Those are about 1/8 of an inch. I don't know if you can see them or not, but they are very small holes, and it seems to be working, let's put it that way. I can't say that, you know, I'm an expert in manufacturing of worm bins, but I can tell you that the worms have not suffered by only having very, very tiny holes in this lower level to get air to this middle level. Looks like they're doing pretty good in here. Looks like they're making nice little cocoons. So this layer looks really nice. You can tell there's still a lot of coconut coir in there. You can see the fibers. So even though it kind of looks like it's pretty close to being done, it's not, just due to the volume of coconut coir in here. Now, looking at this originally when I made it, let me move some things over here. Let's see if I can show you the holes that go into the bottom. Now these are very tiny holes. These are 1/16 of an inch. That's only a couple of millimeters. And originally I had built this with the impression that basically there weren't going to be any worms in the bottom layer. I assumed, wrongly, that the worms would stay up here where the food and the bedding were, and that only the juices that were overflow would end up in the bottom. And that is not what has occurred. Most of the time at the beginning I would find worms down there, little baby worms, I don't know, the only ones that could fit through that hole, I suppose. And I finally just got annoyed with finding a bunch of worms down there and decided to put bedding down there so that they could live comfortably if they decided to move down there. So that's the other thing that I would totally have done differently. I would just make this a stacked system like the kind you purchase, having all levels being sort of equal. I would not have tried to make it a sump. I try to control the moisture in this bin by the way I feed and how much bedding I put in. Looking at the bottom layer here, this is where I do tend to see the highest moisture, and looking in here, right on cue, doing what I told you that I don't expect. The moisture is kind of low down here. But there aren't any holes on this layer at all, and it's fine. There is no problem with this lower part of the bin, even though there are no ventilation holes. So I think whatever ventilation they need, I don't think worms breathe as much as people or dogs or whatever, so it, you know, I just think they don't need it. It's not sealed up tight. The layers, let me see. This part here actually keeps it lifted a little bit, so that maybe allows for some airflow in here. But this does look a little bit dry, so I am going to get them some water. Okay, so I'm just going to give them a little bit of water, get this going again. Normally this is the wettest portion down here because all of the liquid from the food above drips down. Maybe the feedings I've had recently have been kind of dry, and maybe that's why it has not collected the moisture that I have seen recently. So let me go ahead and put this back together and we'll get them fed. I didn't feed this layer last time, so this time we're going to go ahead and feed this layer. I'm going to give them some bedding and some food on this layer, and maybe that will help the moisture below a little bit. I didn't have anything prepared. I just had the coconut coir and the paper soaking in water. So this really has not had a chance to be normally prepared. It didn't have any of the additions to it. So I'm going to go ahead and give them some eggshell. Kind of mix that in because normally that is part of my bedding. If you want to see my prepared bedding, I will link that video at the end. Okay, so what we do have here is some soup stock, celery, potatoes, onions, I think some tea bags maybe, and then I'm going to get them a little bit more bedding. Okay, so no reason to keep it separate other than to keep everything a little bit even. A lot of people have mentioned that they thought maybe I should have little pipes or something to hold it up a little higher. I just never got around to it. Works fine without it. Really, I don't think I need it. But if you want to build yourself one of these, nowadays, each one of these totes would probably cost you more than $10. It's still cheaper than buying one of those commercial stacked systems, and I think it works really good for me though. It cycles just as fast, if not faster, than any other bin system that I have. And you can tell, I don't know if you can tell, but it is sitting a little cattywampus because the food has not kind of degraded yet. But I'm going to make this homogeneous again. And since we put food over there, I don't think we need to feed the top layer except for maybe some worm chow. If you're interested in my worm chow, I can also put a link to how I make that. It's basically whatever is in the kitchen that has degraded. But that's about all we do with this. Basically, it gets maintained about every 3 weeks right now, and the worms are very healthy, and the entire system cycles, and I'm able to harvest it in about 4 to 5 months, and faster if it's warmer. If you would like to see the playlist for this bin, I will link it right over there. And of course, YouTube has their own ideas, and they think you're gonna like this video over here. All right guys, thanks for hanging out with me and my worms, and everybody have a good day.